So there's some really good stuff here, and there was some stuff that really surprised me as well. Hi everyone, it's Daniel here from GI Energy. Today I want to run you through my experience with Amber Electric. I switched to Amber. For some context, I have 27 kilowatt hours of Tesla Powerwall installed. So I have a 10 kilowatt charge and discharge capacity. I have just under 14 kilowatts of solar panels on the roof. And I was with a traditional retailer. I won't name them, but I'll give you some of the figures as we go through. And I switched obviously to Amber, and this is what happened. So I shifted, I filled out the form. 2 days later, I got a phone call. When you get that phone call, be prepared to have the serial number of the hardware handy. So whatever you have installed, you need to be able to let them know exactly what those serial numbers are. Typically, you can find that on the app or the desktop monitoring, or your installer should be able to give you those details. So just have them handy. Without that, they can't do much. I think it takes a little bit longer sometimes as well for them to call. So if you don't get a call straight away, I got mine obviously pretty quickly. I think they've become a lot busier since then. So sometimes it might take a little bit longer than 2 days. It took me 2 business days after that to transfer over to Amber, which I thought was pretty quick. I had access to the app right away, and the app kept me up to date with what was happening in the background. So I was told that it would take 2 weeks basically for the Amber app to get the required permission with the Tesla battery so that it was able to control the battery. And it actually happened about a week sooner than that. So I got the message to say that it was operational and the system was being optimized quite late on in that day, but only a week later. So from there, on the first night, you can see there at 6:44 p.m, I was able to sell back nearly at the full capacity. So I was exporting 9.9 kilowatts to the grid, the battery was discharging at 9.9 kilowatts, which is obviously close to its maximum. 9.2 of that was going back to the grid, and 0.7 was going into my house. So I wasn't using much power, and I was selling it back. That's the whole point with Amber. This was 6:44 p.m, remember? Obviously, usually with just solar or a standard feed-in tariff with a traditional retailer, you'd only be selling back during the day, obviously when that solar was live, but I was able to sell back in the evening on the very first night. I didn't sell too much back, but I ended up with 7.88 kilowatts back to the grid with $1.79 earned. I'd used some energy during that day, so the battery wasn't completely full from the day before, so my net cost was still only 41 cents. But without Amber, I would have paid basically 6.92 kilowatt hours at 30 cents, so $2.76, and then I would have exported back at 4 cents, so that would have given me $31 credit. So I would have had a net cost of $1.76 with my normal retailer, and obviously with Amber it was 41 cents. So I thought that was pretty good. Obviously, if that's the first night that the battery had taken control, that Amber had taken control of the battery. So that's how Amber works. It obviously charges and discharges the battery when it's meant to. So through that night, my battery got me all the way through the night. I didn't need to use any grid power, only just though. You can see there at 7:52 a.m. when the solar started kicking in, I was down to 13%. My battery minimum charge level is set at 10%. So I was pretty close to getting to that minimum charge level. You can see there that the Tesla app agrees with the Amber app, that I sold back that 7.8. That was just good for me to see that there was no discrepancies between the two sets of software. If Tesla had suggested it had just dispatched 7.4 and Amber had said 7.8, that would have been really annoying to me, trying to figure out what the discrepancy was. So I was quite happy to see that they were communicating effectively and that the data was consistent. You can also go here. I had a little play around with the app and had a look at the forecast. It obviously shows you here that you're charging your battery from excess solar. This was at nearly 8 a.m. And it also showed that the forecast is that my battery should be full by 1 p.m. So we'll come back to that and see if that was correct. But that was what that chart was suggesting. There was no point in selling energy back to the grid at that stage. My battery was pretty low anyway, so we're just serving the house at that point. I clicked on the next screen here where you can control your battery. So if I wanted to, I could choose one of those options to charge, discharge, preserve, or consume. I do have another video with a tutorial for the Amber app that goes into a little bit more detail there, but this was only a couple of days in. Obviously, I just wanted to let Amber do its own thing and let the SmartShift function do it for me, so I didn't do any of that. I just left it alone, basically. So when we had a look at the forecasts, it said that my cost forecast was likely to be to sell back was likely to be -2 cents, and it was going to be 7 cents to buy by 10:30. So you can see on those screenshots there how it forecasted that. So let's go back and see what it actually was. So I checked again at 10:39. It was actually 16 cents to buy energy, and selling back was still 7 cents. So this to me was just showed that Amber is not perfect. It's obviously forecasted pretty inaccurately there. In Amber's defense, it's mostly weather patterns that change that, I believe, because obviously the more energy, solar energy that's in the grid, the cheaper the wholesale rate will be. So at this stage, the weather had turned a little bit and there was more cloud cover. There was less solar going back into the grid. So the feed-in tariff was 7 cents instead of -2. But the buy rate was also a lot more. So it was up at 16 cents, and it obviously predicted it being a lot lower than that. So that was, I guess, my first experience with Amber not being 100% accurate, which I knew it wouldn't be. How can it be? It doesn't know exactly what the weather's going to do, and it also doesn't know how people are going to use energy. So there's loads of variables there, and it can't possibly be correct all the time. And by 11 a.m., when I checked again, it had gone back to 4 cents to purchase and 0 cents to sell back. So it changed closer to what it had predicted pretty quickly. Went back and checked at 1 p.m. to see if my battery was fully charged, and it wasn't. My battery was only at 45%. Amber had obviously originally predicted it would be at 100%. So that forecast wasn't accurate either. Again, that's not to say that Amber should have done better. I just don't think it can be done better because of the weather patterns and the difference from how much energy is coming from your solar panels. They just can't predict that properly. So what Amber did was it started to grid charge my battery at 4 cents. So by 1 p.m. it realized that I wasn't going to charge my battery fully by those peak times, and it started to grid charge my battery. And that's what Amber should do. So that's where the smarts come in. That's what you're paying the fee for. And that's the whole benefit of the VPP. So you can see there that at 1:01, I was drawing 13.5 kilowatts from the grid at 4 cents. I was using that basically to charge my battery, and then also there was some energy being used in the home. My solar energy was still providing 2.3 kilowatts, but I was wanting to charge my battery as quickly as possible at 4 cents. So you can see there when you go onto the plan, it shows that that's what was happening, that we were charging it for cheap. And it was at 4 cents. So the reason it did that is because later on that night, we were able to sell it back at 17 cents. So that screenshot there shows you at 6:55 p.m. we were selling energy back to the grid at 17 cents. So again, that's what Amber's supposed to do. It's obviously recognized that my battery wasn't going to be full. It's grid charged it at 4 cents, or less than 4 cents it would have been overall, but that screenshot time 4 cents obviously fluctuates up and down a bit. It can charge it for -2 cents. It can charge it for 0 cents. You can charge it for whatever the wholesale rate is, but it will always charge it if it's going to be cheaper than what the cost is going to be later. So at this, let's say 4 cents I charged it for and sold it back at 17 cents later, that's obviously a net positive benefit for me there. So we would have been paying around 25 cents at that time. So if it hadn't have grid charged at 4 cents, I would have been exposed to a 25 cents purchase rate, and obviously wouldn't have been able to sell back at 17 cents. That's pretty cool. And this is obviously only very early on. The SmartShift is still learning at this stage, but it's getting a lot of things right quite early on. Then my battery at that point in time, when we're looking at how much it's discharged and how much it's charged and sold, you can see that my battery still had 74% at 8:56 p.m. So plenty of battery, obviously nicely charged up at 4 cents. We've discharged some, we've still got plenty left to feed the home and obviously get us through the night. So it wasn't actually fully charged until 4:30, which you can see there from that Tesla screenshot. So obviously originally it thought 1 p.m. It realized that it wasn't going to be charged by then, and it's then charged it at 4 cents, and it's got it charged up by a reasonable time. So 4:30 is probably just before those rates got really high, which is great. It did exactly what it was meant to do. And then coming to the end of that sort of demand window, we would have been paying 23 cents if we didn't have battery charge still, and we could have been selling back at 16 cents. So pretty good. We still had 58% left at the end of that window. So by 8:45, we still had 58% of the battery charge left, which is plenty to get us through the night. No grid charge needed through the night. Obviously, we still had enough battery power left. And you can see there at 6:20 in the morning, we still had 36% battery left, which is probably more than we needed. And as the SmartShift learns, it will learn that it could probably sell a little bit more back at those higher rates and leave a little bit less for us in the morning until the solar energy obviously kicks in again and starts charging that battery. You can see from my Tesla app that overnight we didn't use any grid power, obviously no solar, and 3.8 kilowatt hours of Tesla Powerwall from midnight through till 6:21 a.m. A couple of spikes there. I think that's hot water. I should probably sort that out. I could put a relay or a timer on there to level those out. But again, we were covered anyway with battery charge. So the whole of yesterday, on day 2 of the SmartShift working, we did draw some grid power, but not much. And obviously some of that was to charge the battery. So pretty happy with that result. There was 39.2 kilowatt hours used in total, and 5.9 of that came from the grid. Obviously, the vast majority of that has come from the grid at a really low rate, which is, again, what Amber are there for. And we had enough to get us through the morning, where the rates got quite high that morning. You can see there they were up to a prediction of 53 cents. 35 cents was the live price at 6:21 a.m. But that didn't bother me because we had lots of battery power to get us through all the way through there. You can see by sort of 9 a.m. it starts settling down again. And we weren't exposed to any of those rates because we had our battery there to see us through. So overall, yesterday we almost broke even, which is pretty good. I mean, if I was with my normal retailer, I obviously would have had to pay a fair bit more, but we were able to get our usage cost down to only 28 cents. So that's basically how Amber has been working for me. And I could go through every single day, but this video would end up being a couple of hours long. It gradually just gets a little bit better at learning your usage, and then you might change something and throw a spanner in the works a little bit. The inaccuracies are there in terms of sometimes I'll look at the app and I'll wonder why is it not grid charging. I can see myself that the battery isn't going to fully charge in time, and that can be a little bit frustrating. But Amber themselves will tell you that it's not perfect. And there's other times where you think, geez, it's still on 58%. I'm pretty sure I could sell a bit more back here and still get me through the night. And those two examples are where you can, if you want to, go back to the control your battery and dispatch your battery, or obviously charge your battery from the grid manually. So you can choose 30 minutes, 90 minutes, 120 minutes. You can interrupt it if you get halfway through and go, oh, it's using more than I thought. And you can stop it, so you can manually override, but SmartShift will get it right more often than not. So got my first bill, obviously 30 days later, so let's have a look at what that looks like. One of the things, the first page of the bill there is pretty normal. You've just got all your details on there. It cost me $17.48, basically, for my electricity for that 31-day period. And one thing I found quite hard to find before joining Amber was how much is my network fee going to be? We all get charged network fees on whoever the retailer is. Usually they're marked up. So whether you're with Origin, AGL, Energy Australia, whoever it is, they obviously have their margin that they put on that, and then they sell it to you. Amber basically only charged me 96 cents. So you can see there the network daily supply charges are 96 cents a day. I was getting charged $1.40 a day with my other retailer. So to put that into perspective, $1.40 a day for 31 days would have been $43.40. With Amber, it was $29.76. So I've saved $13.64 over that 31 days. The Amber fee that you pay them to use their service is $25. The idea there is that you cover that $25 and then some by selling energy back at the right time and by using energy when it's low. But the $13.64 that I've saved there just on those network fees alone has more than covered half of that. So I've covered just a bit more than half of that fee just with the network savings. And then obviously selling energy back to the grid has saved me more. You can see here that my usage, my average buy rate was 10.95 cents per kilowatt hour. And it's up around 33 cents, 37 cents for some people, even as much as mid 40s for some people. So at 10 cents, that's really, really quite good. And then your solar exports, my average export rate was just under 14 cents, so 13.99 cents. Again, my rate with my previous retailer was 4 cents, so I'm getting 10 cents extra. Some of the other things here that are worth looking at on the next page, you've got your detailed bill charges. So you can see there what your usage fees are broken down into. And these are all, don't forget, wholesale rates that are being passed on to you. So you can see there that all the different little decimal points, cents for carbon neutral offsets and environmental certificate, market charges, network fees. All of that stuff is basically what you're being charged for your energy, and that's what Amber's passing on to you. And then further down, you've got your network supply charges, and then obviously your Amber subscription fee. Another thing that I would say here is this bill is from a period in winter. It's taken me a little while to get this video done, but it was a winter period and it was in Brisbane. Brisbane's network and grid is more stable than Sydney, and I think less stable than Victoria. So depending on where you are, this is going to be a little bit different. And depending on the time of year, this is going to be a little bit different. The Amber benefit for me in winter in Brisbane is probably the lowest it's ever going to be. As we get hotter and people use more air cons, the grid struggles more, the rates are higher, which is a good thing for me because I've got a battery. I'm not going to pay that anyway, but I am going to sell back. So when I can sell back at a higher rate, it benefits me more. So I guess this bill is kind of vanilla in the sense that I think I'm going to do better in the summer months and I'm going to save more money in the summer months than I do now. Also, if you're in Sydney, you'll see better savings because your rates will be higher, but so will the feed-in. And then Victoria, I think, will be slightly less than Brisbane even, and I believe South Australia would be somewhere in between Brisbane and New South Wales. So depending on where you are, your benefits are going to change a bit, but the app will still work the same way. You're still going to buy low and sell high. The algorithm's still going to be as accurate and as inaccurate as this at different times, and you're still going to see the same benefits. It's just going to be scaled up or down depending on what the grid needs there. So I would say that this bill is probably the most neutral in terms of how it's similar to my usual retailer bill, and I will get a much greater benefit in the summer months. So I'll follow that up when we get to the summer months. But so far, I'm happy that I've moved. I mean, paying 10 cents and selling back at 14 might not be world record breaking in terms of, huge feed-in tariffs and really low rates. But don't forget, this is when SmartShift was learning as well. So that's the first month that it's had to learn. And there were no price spikes. A price spike is where the rates go through the roof for a short period of time and you can get really high feed-in. So we had none of them, and we probably won't get any of them until the summer kicks in. So when we get the hotter months, you'll get price spikes. You can then start selling energy back at $1, $2, $3, $4 a kilowatt hour for a short period. Obviously with my battery having a 10 kilowatt charge and discharge, if my house is using half a kilowatt, I'll still be able to sell 9.5 back, or whatever that rate is. So you only need a day or two of that here and there where you can really get some nice credits, and hopefully my bill can be zero. But I mean, if it's $17.48, I'm pretty happy with that. It would have been about $300 before. So significant difference. Definitely happy with how it's worked. The only thing I was surprised by is the forecasts not being too accurate, and then obviously the SmartShift not being perfect in terms of knowing when to charge your battery. But all in all, I think it's really great. I wouldn't advise it for people that have got a smaller battery than they need. So you really want to be careful and make sure that you've got enough battery to see you through from 4 o'clock till 10 p.m. If you don't have enough to see you through that period, it's probably not going to be worth your while, because you're going to discharge it all. You're not going to have anything to sell anyway. And then you're also going to be exposed to those higher rates during that time. So it's not for everybody. I wouldn't do it if you didn't have a battery, and I wouldn't do it if you didn't have a correctly sized battery. Mine's probably just about right. Any smaller and it probably would have been borderline. But yeah, it gets me through. A 27 kilowatt hour battery gets me through and justifies being on amber. And I'm really happy with it. If you're considering a battery for your own home, we do have a battery guide as well. So I'll put a link to the battery guide in the description to this video. So if you want some more information, you can download that for free. And then if you want more information, again, hit us up in the comments or get in touch with us. We've got a team here of people that are happy to answer questions and help further if we can. Thanks very much for watching.